for that kind of leadership role.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly Amir was an outstanding, he was an outstanding everything. He was an outstanding player, incredible career in terms of points, rebounds, assists, all those things, but equally as important as a leader and just a guy that you could really count on day to day in terms of practice habits and building team and caring about team and leadership. And, I think it's going to be a group effort. Hunter Tyson, I think, is our returning senior, has certainly taken a big step forward in that role and been a good mentor, especially to the two grad guys, I think. I think a lot of guys on our team have a lot of respect for Hunter because of the way he's developed through the program and kind of earned his spurs, and by the way he started to play at times last year. I think he's a good player who's going to have a good senior year. And I think, we're trying to get Alamir Dawes and Nick Honor, two of our guards that we're counting on for a lot of productivity, to take a little more ownership and leadership role in the leadership role. Probably not as natural for them as some other guys, but they've got to come out of their shells a little bit. And I think they're starting to do that. And then I think the two grad guys have got to help us in some ways with experience and just poise and leadership of really based on experience of having played at the level and been in difficult environments and physical games and kind of used to college basketball. So I think it's going to be by committee. And, we've seen a lot of different guys step up in different ways throughout the course of the, preseason.
You mentioned Nick Honor. He led you guys last year. What more do you want to see from him defensively? Just maybe leading on that side of the.
Yeah, I think Nick needs to really, I really believe that Nick and Al in some ways will determine a lot of our spirit. I think Amir was kind of the guy that led our spirit last year. And what I mean by that a little bit in basketball, your guards are always, the ball's in their hands when you have it to start every possession, and then they're guarding it to start every defensive possession. So we need those two guys to be extremely active defensively and aggressive defensively to set a tone initially for our defense. And if those guys do a good job in that area, I think it really helps the other guys with how we want to play defensively. And so just getting those two guys to continue to be ball hawking guards and guys that are disruptive and play with great energy and communicate better. I think we need them to communicate at a little higher level. That will be a great start for us defensively.
You look at it, maybe Dawes and Honor starting together or bringing them off the bench. It seemed like sometimes last year Nick came off the bench. Spark.
Yeah, I think all of it is to be decided, starting lineups, and there certainly might be times we play the two little guys together. Do we start them together? Maybe. I think that's something that we've got to look at.
Depending on who you're playing.
Yeah, exactly. Depend on opponent. We're still, that's one of the challenges early on, is you're trying to figure out who plays the best with whom. And, when you're constantly playing against each other, that's, it's not quite as good in terms of figuring it out with other opponents. You don't get quite as many possessions to check on some things that you'd like. But I think we've got a lot of different ways we can go. And that certainly is one way.
How do you figure that chemistry out as the season goes on? What do you look for? This guy works well with this guy. How's that?
Well, there are certain lineups that are sometimes better offensively and some lineups that are better defensively. And then obviously you're working that through with your opponent. And sometimes, if you have depth, you have the ability to change sometimes and make some changes. And then sometimes you just like the way groups play together. Consistently, they perform well, and you see some things that you really like, or you like bringing a player or two off the bench because they give you something different. That certainly has been the case. Sometimes Alex Hemingway, it's nice to bring a guy like that off the bench who can shoot. And, he's a guy that the game can get going on sometimes and people kind of forget about him, and he, makes a three or two right away. And so sometimes it's that, sometimes it's a guy who's like Nick, who brought great energy and speed off the bench. And all of a sudden the tempo either stays the same or elevates, and that puts more pressure on an opponent. So, you're looking at a lot of different factors when you're trying to figure out who to start, who to bring off the bench and when.
Speaking of that cohesion, how have you seen maybe those grad transfers and some of those freshmen kind of gel together with the team and just find that chemistry?
Yeah, really good chemistry in terms of off the court and how we interact in practice. And I think the guys genuinely really like each other. I think the transfers have done a really good job of kind of coming in and, hey, how do I fit in? What's my role? What's my niche? What do you guys need me to do? I think the older guys have done a really good job of making those guys feel welcome and telling them how much we need them and are excited about having them here. And then I think everybody is trying to really just kind of coach up the young guys, the freshmen. There's just a lot. It's a lot of information. For the two bigger guys, it's the physicality of the position playing inside is completely different. The amount of information that you're learning and trying to digest and make quick decisions with is challenging. So, everybody's really doing a good job of trying to help the young guys.
Collins kind of fits the similar play style that Trapp did. What kind of role do you kind of envision him just having this season?
Yeah, I think he can do some of the same things that Clyde did. Clyde, the thing that was underrated about Clyde is he really knew our system well, both sides of the ball, and did some nice things defensively and in certain matchups. He was an incredible defensive rebounder. Almost 5 defensive rebounds a game for a guard is high level. Those were things that you'll miss. And he was a pretty good distributor and was kind of a game-to-game scorer. I think David can do some of those same things. David can certainly score the ball in a couple different ways like Clyde. Both guys could make a three. They're not lights out 3-point shooters, but they make them, if you leave them open. He's a guy that can drive the ball just like Clyde can get to the basket. So I think there's some similarities with how they play. It's just Clyde had a little more experience, and it'll just take David a little longer to get used to how we do things here in our system. But I really like some of the things he showed us so far in the preseason.
Anyone on Zoom has anything, feel free to start chiming in if you would like.
Hey, Coach, it's David Hood with TigerNet. It seems like every year, especially in college basketball, it's marked by change. You've got a new assistant in Kareem. You've got freshmen, 2 transfers. Does it ever get any easier? And, does all of this change, does it help sometimes to kind of get a new perspective on things, to get a new look at guys, that kind of thing?
Well, I think when things aren't going well, you sometimes like change in terms of new blood. And I think when you're coming off a really good season like we did, one of the reasons we were pretty good last year is we had a lot of older guys back. We had experience, and we had, it was this time of year, we were much further along than last year just because so many guys that we were counting on were older and experienced and had been in the program. That part makes it a little harder and a little more unnerving when half your roster is new and, you're trying to get everybody to adjust to how you want to do things. You certainly have to simplify things. I think when you have experience, you can make more adjustments, both in game and on the way in game planning. Maybe you can do some things that on the fly that guys have done in the past. And if you haven't practiced it quite as much that week, you still feel like you can pull it off, or it's something you have done and guys are just a little more comfortable. So I think, certainly this is the nature of college basketball right now. There's a lot of change. There's a lot of folks that leave and there's going to be a lot of newcomers most years on most teams. And so this is something you just have to get used to. And as coaches, we're trying to get used to it as well. I think in some ways, maybe you have to simplify things a little more. In some years, we're trying to simplify a few things now than maybe we would have been last year at this time. So you have to make adjustments for sure.
Hey, Coach, it's Trevor Gross from CUTigers.com. PJ Hall got some good playing time last year as a freshman. Have you seen him take a big step forward? What have you seen from him in the offseason?
Yeah, very pleased with PJ. He has battled a little knee issue, and so that he was out a couple of weeks with that early on. But really think it's his time to take a big step, and excited to watch him have the opportunity. He's worked really hard. His body looks much better physically. He's, I think, in a better place than he was a year ago. Mentally, he's excited about the opportunity. He's worked really hard for it. I think he's looking forward to it. And now he just needs to get some more game experience. He needs to see the ball go in the basket a few more times and just gain some confidence. But, I'm really happy for him and excited for him and look for him to do a lot of good things this year.
Brad, this is Matt with Clemson Sports. I guess, what do you look at and say, hey, we need this guy to take a step for us to have the year we want to, or we need this to go well, playing style, whatever it may be, to say we're going to have a good year if this happens?
Well, I think PJ has to have a good year. He has to be productive. He's got to take a big step forward, and I'm optimistic that he'll do that. There's no question that, the loss of Amir, we did a lot of things through him. We won't do quite as many things through PJ right now. But he's going to get a lot of touches, and he's going to have to make some plays for us, and he'll be excited about that. So he certainly is an important guy. I think Hunter just naturally needs to do what's next for him, and I think he'll do that. I think he's a guy that has had some really good games, especially middle to end of last year, and was gaining confidence last year. I hate that he got hurt a little bit last year, because I really would have liked to have seen him play a full junior season, but I think he'll do a lot of good things for us. And then our two guards, Nick and Al, there's no question that those guys have to play well. When they play well, good things really happen for us. And sometimes when they struggle, it makes it more challenging for this team. And, it's hard to comment on Nas and David until you kind of see them a little bit more. I think both guys will be productive. I think both guys will play a good bit and have opportunities, and I'm sure they'll do well. But it's a little more on the guys who are returning right now in terms of expectations, because you kind of know a little bit more about what they've done in the past. But I think all of our guys will be improved, and a lot of the returning guys, this will be a chance for them to take a big step. And I kind of talked to a couple of them about it, like, guys, hey, last year there were some times, like the two little guards, they didn't always have to play great and we could win. Amir and Clyde could maybe have a big game and do something. And, this year that's probably not going to be the case. Those guys are going to have to play well. PJ is going to have to play well more times than not. That's just when you become a starter and you become a guy that's going to get a lot of touches and get opportunities, then, the wins and the losses are going to fall in your productivity. And, that's a responsibility you got to be excited about. That's why you work so hard to prepare and put yourself in that position. And I think our guys will hopefully be excited and ready to do that.
Brad, this is Larry. You alluded to injuries at the start. I'm just curious, is there any?
No, we're okay right now. He's wearing a brace because of an issue that he had earlier. And it's something that he's had to deal with a little bit in his career. So he's still practicing, and right now we're fine.
Do you think that the sort of the size of this team makes it sort of conducive to playing faster at times? Is that something?
I can't quite hear the size of this team.
Going to need to play faster. That's going to be more advantageous, just given this.
I don't think it's going to look crazy different. Like, we're not going to all of a sudden, one thing is, if you do that, and PJ is not going to be involved as much. He's got a lot of things he's really good at, but he's not a guy that's going to run up and down the court, faster than everybody else on a regular basis. So we got to be careful that we make sure we're using him. But we're certainly going to try to, on misses, we're going to try to push the tempo, and we're not afraid to shoot quickly. I think that's a common misconception. That we somehow always play slow. There's all kinds of film where we come down on one pass and shoot. in transition on misses. Now, we don't always blow it up on makes and rush it down and play quickly on a made basket by our opponent, but on missed baskets, more times than not, we're going to try to move the ball down there. If we feel like we can get something early, we're more than happy to take it, be aggressive, and certainly when you have some speed with guys like Nick and Al, and Chase is fast. I think those are guys that can play quickly in the open court. Hemingway can get down there and get some open shots. We're going to try to do some of those things.
Coach, it's Trevor again. Kind of sticking with the size. You got two players over 6'8", a freshman and a sophomore. PJ's your heaviest player at 240. How much of a challenge is it going to be when you go against some of the bigger teams in the ACC that really like to pound the boards?
Yeah, that could be an issue. We'll see. You know, we weren't the biggest team in the league last year. We did have a little more depth. Amir was experienced and older, and I think there was a physicality to Amir that, Amir didn't come in he didn't really come in as a center. He came in as a forward, and we kind of turned him into a inside-outside center, but he was older and physical and could play center his last couple of years because of his maturity and girth. And obviously PJ is going to be able to do that. Ben Middlebrooks can do it. We'd like to think Ian Shefflin, even though he's just about 6'8", he could do it a little bit for us as a third center if we need one. And a kid who I think in a year or two will be able to be a center as well. There's some times that we're going to be a little smaller, but hopefully, we're going to be able to competitively fight down there to compete. I think Hunter does a good job of competing. He doesn't weigh the most, but he's a really competitive guy. And there were games last year against some of the bigger teams in the league that he more than held his own. So we know he can do that, but that's going to be a challenge for sure in certain situations.
Any more
Brad,
questions?
can you hear me, Brad?
Yeah. Go ahead. Now I cannot.
Can you hear me?
Got you now. Go ahead. Now not so much.
Maybe I'll try again later.
All right.
I'll go again if I may, Coach. Just the way the schedule lays out, you're starting almost a month earlier than last season when you had 5 out of your first 6 against Power 5 teams. Will that help you to build a little bit more chemistry and cohesion with all these newcomers?
Yeah, it will before ACC play. It doesn't before we play these first games. You go into the first games, still trying to figure out what you got. I mean, that's just the nature of it this year. But it probably does help this year to have a few more games than last year. Last year, I know it felt like forever until we finally played a game and got started. In some ways, we were just grateful that we got to play. But it's like I said, last year's team was so much more experienced and we just kind of knew we were ready. I felt unbelievably confident about last year's group right away, just by what I'd seen. This year's team, I think, is doing well. But we can use a few more days to get ready. I mean, we need a few more practices and time to adjust and not just us getting used to our guys and what we have and all those kinds of things. But, you're not going to get as much time as you like. Sometimes you got to be ready. I think it'll be, I'm as excited as everybody to see how we play.
Brad, this is Matt again. With the transfers, do you know yet, like, hey, these two are gonna start, or they're gonna be our 6th man, or they're gonna be just key role players?
No, I think everything's still up for debate. We're trying to see who plays well in what situation and just want some consistent play. I think both guys have been productive and shown good things. They're going to be out there a lot. There's no doubt about it. Whether we start them, I don't know yet. Both of them, none of them. But I like the way they've approached things. I like their maturity and physicality. So yeah, they've been welcome additions to our team.
have time for one or two more if anyone on Zoom has anything.
All good? Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Coach.
Brad.
Yep.
We'll be back shortly with Coach Butler.